So Robert, you can't go through those experiences without learning some lessons or having some good advice from your ventures. And you mentioned all your ventures, you mentioned facts, but what I'm really interested in is some of the lessons or some life-changing things along the way during those adventures in your career that you would take away and you could pass on to us.
I like that question because one circumstance that I did not mention at all in my narration, but I will tell briefly now, points out a really important lesson. When I was at the South Pole, I had a lab that was about 100 yards upwind from the main station. We had a geodesic dome with buildings inside the geodesic dome, but at ambient temperature, and we were down well 110 or so below continuously during the winter. One of the problems at the South Pole is that everything is very dry. Fire is a real danger. We had a Quonset archway that was filled with 10,000 gallon bladders of special Arctic diesel fuel. It's called DFA, Diesel Fuel Arctic. And we practiced fire drills. I was the station fire chief, so I organized drills everywhere, and everything we could think of, we had fire drills, but the one place we did not practice a fire drill was in the fuel arch, because we had taken the fuel, put it in a bucket, and tried to light it on fire. It didn't seem possible to us that the fuel would burn in the conditions down at the South Pole. Well, as winter progressed, I got a guilty conscience. I talked to the station manager, the guy who was in charge of the facilities, and there were only 19 of us. That's all we were wintered over. And I said, look, let's have a drill for the fuel arch. And he said, sure, let's do it. And so we spent an entire day practicing what we would do if we really had a fire in the fuel arch. We took our Scott masks, our Scott air pack masks, and we put construction paper inside them so that it was darkened and we couldn't see, because diesel fuel would make black smoke. Well, 2 weeks later, I was in my lab when the fire alarm sounded, and the station manager came on and said, this isn't a drill, folks, this is for real. And it took me about 15 minutes to get to the station because the temperature was cold. I tried to go in through the fuel arch, and the door blasted open and knocked me on my butt with black smoke billowing out of it. So I finally got around through the main entrance of the station, and everybody was there waiting for me. And when we worked our way into the fuel arch, we found one of the bladders fully involved. And we managed to put it out with some heroic effort on the part of one of the guys who was injured in the process, but not life-threateningly. And when we sat down and gave ourselves a careful analysis afterwards, we realized that if we had not drilled, if we hadn't had that exercise and knew what to do, by the time we got our act together, we would have all been dead. One of the things we discovered was, for instance, we had a Purple K hose, a PPK hose that was on a reel that you could pull into the fire position. And when we tried to pull it, it shattered into a million pieces.
Wow.
So lessons learned, due diligence, over and over again. Anytime you're in a hazardous situation, do your due diligence. Never, ever neglect it.
That's a good one. Yeah. Can you, I remember this story. How'd that fire start, Robert?
The fuel bladders, the one that was in use, was covered with a heat blanket, and then it had a yard thick layer of fiberglass batting over the top of it. And somehow the fuel bladder had sprung a leak, and the fuel had wicked its way up into the batting and then shorted out the heat blanket and started the fire. And every time we would knock the flames down with the fire extinguishers, we couldn't use the hose, but the fire extinguishers, it would go down, and as soon as we stopped doing it, it would immediately ignite again. And the only place we could turn the power off was on the other side of the fire.
If I could, Jason, like, if what I took from that was, you know, and whether you're in the business world or you're still in the military, you cannot discount an anomaly. You have to account for that. You have to anticipate it. No matter how small the chance, it's still a chance. So I appreciate that, Robert. And I think what I took from your story was don't discount a potential anomaly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah.